Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Passion Whisky Québec Lunch and Learn session. I'm today with Peter Mulryan. Hi, Peter.
Bonjour,
Thank
Québec.
Bonjour, Peter.
Ça va bien, oui.
Ça va très bien, et vous?
Oh, très bien, merci.
Excellent. Donc, un peu de français, c'est intéressant. On va quand même faire l'entrevue en anglais, mais si tu veux rajouter des choses en français, n'hésite pas. I will take a few seconds just to explain the people how we are going to do this session, and I'll be back with you after, Peter. Donc, pour ceux qui se joignent peut-être pour une première fois, bienvenue à ce Lunch and Learn. Le plan aujourd'hui, c'est à peu près 30 à 40 minutes, discussion avec Peter, qui va nous présenter la distillerie BLACKWATER. Ceux qui se rappellent, peut-être que vous avez vu il y a 3 ans, on a fait une première importation privée de leurs produits il y a 3 ans. Puis, on va refaire une importation privée, un groupe d'importation privée. Donc, on va parler aussi de ces produits-là un peu plus tard là, dans la discussion. Mais pour l'instant, on va un peu comprendre, pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas la distillerie, d'où vient Peter, comment la distillerie est née. C'est quoi la mentalité un peu de la distillerie aussi? C'est très intéressant là, au niveau de la fabrication des produits. Si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas dans les commentaires, autant sur Facebook que sur YouTube. Je vais être en mesure de prendre vos commentaires et vos questions et après ça, les poser à Peter. So, Peter, again, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure. I mentioned we discussed together 3 years ago. Time flies already. We got few products from you at that time, but yeah, I mean, in 3 years, many things happened. So maybe for those who did not, let's say, know you from previous order, we can start by just presenting yourself, and after that, go through the distillery history, as it's very nice too. And I'll stop you probably many times asking questions and go through things. But yeah, go ahead. Maybe just present yourself and where this passion for whiskey come from also.
Well, we started the distillery 10 years ago, so 2014. My background is a spirits writer. I've written many, many books on whiskey, and I've contributed to lots of magazines. That's one of my books, The Whiskies of Ireland, now going into its 4th edition, updated every couple of years. It's a good starter for those who don't know much about whiskey. It's easy to read. It's approachable.
Yeah,
even though it's in English. Sorry about that. But it's still a good book. So the distillery started initially making white spirits, making gin. And that's what you took from us, firstly. And then 6 years ago, we opened a new distillery and we started making whiskey. The whiskey started back in 2018, so we're now 2024. So we're starting now this year to start releasing our own whiskeys. And we can talk about that a wee bit later on. That's my background. And we are a small distillery, so we don't have any multinational funding. We are completely independent. We're self-financing, and there's only about 9 of us in the company. So we're based, if this is Ireland, my very bad map of Ireland, and Dublin's here. We're on the south coast here. So there's 2 distilleries in Waterford. One's called Waterford, and we're the nice distillery in Waterford. We're the ones in the west of the county. We're very rural, very small, and behind me up there you will see our stills, and we have a video coming up later on with some music in it, and that was shot at the distillery and gives you a sense of how big or how small we are.
Yeah, no, it's and how many liters do you produce per year?
We don't ever count, because that is it's a kind of a multinational thing to look at output in terms of pure liters of alcohol.
Yeah.
We don't do that. Our output, basically, just so you know, our system is half a ton. So half a ton of grain.
Okay.
And every time we make a whiskey, it's half a ton. And our system and the whiskies we make means that a half a ton of grain equates to in or around a barrel of whiskey.
Okay.
So if you run the machine every day, you get a cask of whiskey every day. If you run it 7 times a week, you get 7 casks in a week. That's kind of how it works. So it's small and it's boutique. Some years we've made maybe only 80 or 90 casks of whiskey. We're small. The other issue too is we could make more, I suppose, but it's about cash flow as well.
Yeah.
If you make a cask of whiskey, it's going to cost you several €1,000 to make the cask. And then you have to put that cask in a warehouse and you can't touch it for at least 3 years. In our case, close to 5 years. And all the time it's in the warehouse, it's evaporating. So
yeah,
it ties up an awful lot of cash. So we just have to be careful because we are self-financing that we can keep the process going.
So the growth is really slow based on that aspect that you self-finance everything. So
yeah, and also this year is the first year we've really started releasing. We've a release program. So what's happening now is we're emptying casks. There's cash coming in, and now it allows us to think more about laying down more stock. Bearing in mind that stock may not be sold for till the year 2030 or something. I mean, that's the problem with this business. It's very long.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a picture of your let's say distillery, but before it was the distillery. So explain a little bit.
Yeah, that's basically, there's 3 buildings. The main building, it says McCarthy's Hardware. That's the still house.
Yeah.
On the small other side, you'll see a little lean-to building. That's now all gone, and that's got a brand new build there, which is full of offices and equipment. And in the background, you'll see a roof, just there in the top roof. That is that's a shop, or was a shop. That's now ours as well, and that's a space we're going to develop at some point in the future.
Okay, so you had to basically select a building that can fit stills and everything, because obviously this is not designed to be a distillery.
Yeah, that's
at the beginning.
Yeah, that's what it looked like when we got it. You can see that the balcony had to be taken away, so the stills on the left-hand side there could rise up and fill the space. And again, you'll see those later on. But it's an industrial building, so it was easier for us to turn it into a distillery, and also less expensive than trying to build something brand new on a greenfield site. Because again, we didn't have a whole lot of money.
Yeah, and what surprised me is that it's right in the middle of the village.
Yeah, it's the middle of the village, which means we can't store whiskey. So we can't store our casks of whiskey on site for 2 reasons. One is space. The second is it's a fire risk. So we distill and then we move. And on that map, there's Ballyduff. You didn't need my map of Ireland. You have one.
Yeah.
We're Ballyduff, and if you go south to the coast, we store our barrels on the coast, just below us.
Just below. Okay.
You can see we're about 45 minutes from Cork City, and about an hour from Waterford, which is on the far side. So you see the final F in Ballyduff.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where Waterford City is.
Awesome. Okay. So so now it's totally different. You build the stills. You build. Let me just show you again. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's the inside of the building now. There's the stairs, which we retained. As you see, everything else has been stripped out. We've put the stills in, and on the back you can just see the beginning of the brew house. All those stainless steel tanks. That goes back. That's the brew house.
Awesome. And I figure out right now you're just on top of these stairs. Am I right?
Yeah. Basically, at the top of the stairs, on that balcony, there's a big public space where we have a shop and people can come and visit and have, try some whiskey and buy some whiskey. And then behind and there again, there's offices and office space.
Awesome. Great. So everything is set up. I mean, as you mentioned, it's small stills. Have you worked a lot to find your let's say your whiskey or your taste, what you want to achieve with that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of bullshit spoken about whiskey and stills. The honest truth is, until you run whiskey through a still, you really don't know what sort of whiskey you're going to get, because every still is different. The stills we have are former grappa stills built by Frilli in Siena in Italy. And Frilli made them in the late 80s, and then the grappa business collapsed. Frilli bought the stills back, and then we purchased them as new from Frilli. They fixed them all up and made them all compliant with modern day needs. And they produce, not surprisingly, quite an oily spirit. And that suits us because the kind of whiskey we're making is old-fashioned whiskey. And you need a lot of copper contact. So it's smaller stills. We tend to make a lot of non-compliant pot still whiskey. In other words, whiskey, the way it used to be made, is no longer defined as pot still whiskey, that's another story.
Exactly.
But we're still making it because it tastes brilliant. And if we're a small distillery, the worst thing we can do is make triple distilled single malt, because it's the second most boring form of whiskey in the world. And if you're a small distillery and you're trying to make people interested in what you do, if you say, hey, I got a triple distilled single malt, really, I mean, we're drowning in it. We're drowning in it. There's no point of difference. So we make interesting whiskeys, some whiskeys that haven't been made in 200 years. And we've got one coming out later in the summer based on a mash bill or a recipe from 1824. So it's 200 years since someone made this whiskey. And we had to kind of relearn how to make these whiskeys because they're quite different to modern whiskeys.
Yeah, a lot of things in the last few sentences that
I know. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, they're yeah. So first, I'm just curious. You said it's the second most boring whiskey. What's the first one for you?
Oh, grain whiskey.
Grain whiskey? Okay. Because of the grain? Because of the...
It can be fine if it's very old. It needs to be old, because what you're doing is you're taking a very boring grain, which is normally maize, and you are boiling the bejesus out of it up to 93%. Remember, vodka is 96, so you're getting close to neutral. So therefore, you need to lean very heavily on your casks and very heavily on age. We can't do that. We're too small. We'd be broke. So we have to have more interesting inputs. And what I mean by that is, think of bread. Okay, just think triple distilled single malt is a loaf, a sliced pan in a plastic bag. Okay, it's a supermarket product.
Yeah,
you can pick it up for not very much money. It's fine, but it's pretty uninteresting. If you change the inputs, if you change the grain mix, if you put in some brown flour, okay, now it's getting interesting. It's a brown bread or a granary bread, or if you have a very special kind of wheat or a very special kind of yeast, you can make a baguette, or you can make something that's much more interesting than just a sliced loaf. If you think of it that way, whiskey is kind of like liquid bread. If you change your inputs, you change the kind of whiskey you're making. And if you make a very interesting sourdough bread or a very interesting brioche, it's a long way from a sliced pan. And that's how I kind of think of our whiskey.
Okay. Yeah. So you're working. You mentioned with the old recipe. Yeah. My first question is, where did you find that recipe? Is it?
Well, that's back to my story as a journalist. I was researching about whiskey and writing books. And when writing books, I would come across recipes for whiskeys from distilleries that are no longer with us. I'll show you one now. I didn't find this one, by the way. Someone else found this one. But this is from 1914, from the 27th of January, 1914. Now, you won't be able to read it, but trust me, that's a page from the brew book on the day. And you can see it has the name of the grains and it has the quantity used.
Okay.
So we use that then. In this case, this is Allman and Company, Bandon, which is a distillery long gone, which is in County Cork. So this is over 110 years ago. So we now have that recipe. So what we can do is we can recreate it. Now, we're not trying to make it exactly the same because everything's changed. The varieties of grain and the water and the stills and it's all changed.
Yeah.
But what it gives you is it gives you a window into the kind of whiskey that made Irish whiskey so popular all those years ago. And it was not Jameson as we know it today, or Tullamore Dew as we know it today, because all those whiskies were changed in the 1970s, and they are no longer like they used to be. The whiskey we're making is much more like how Irish whiskey used to taste.
So that's your target or your search is to try to find the way it was before and try to make it available again to the public to taste older whiskey. So you have multiple recipes. You have different. I saw that you released some. And you talked a little bit about that other small cask product and things like that with different recipes.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're trying to find a more interesting future for Irish whiskey by looking into the past in the way that many artisan bakers are trying to find interesting breads by just making bread the way our parents or grandparents made it and not in an industrial manner. So we released, this is the dirt grain. This is our first release. This is box number 3. We did 1,000 of these and we're hoping sending some your way. The idea of this was to give you liquid history. So this is a history lesson in a box. So what's in this are 4 whiskies. Each of them is in a 200 ml bottle. There they are. And each of these represents a different time. So this first one here is a recipe from 1838. And why is this interesting? It's because this recipe came from before the Great Famine. And the famine in Ireland is why there's so many Irish people in Canada. And pre-famine, a lot of wheat was used in making Irish whiskey. Post-famine, no wheat, because wheat was human food and it wasn't appropriate to use it in making whiskey. So then you see a lot of oats coming into whiskey. This is 1893, this recipe here. And there's the mash bill there. You can see it's 46% barley, 35% malt, 15% oat, and 4% peated malt. So this would be very typical of the time, and so on and so forth. This one here from 1908 is essentially the mash bill for Powers whiskey, as Powers whiskey used to be. And finally, that one I just showed you in the book from 1915, that's it there. That's the whiskey from 1915. And it's a delicious, delicious whiskey. And then the idea is to come to the book, and the book, that's it there. The book tells you the history of what you're drinking and how it all.
So each of the products are described, and it's something very interesting. And if honestly we have good feedback from the people, I'm really looking to have that bottling around here in Quebec province.
Excellent.
So we can do that import.
Just so you know, that bottle number 15, there's a whiskey writer called Jim Murray who writes an annual whiskey Bible. And Jim Murray, this year, 2024, has said that Mash Bill 15, which is the one you have there, is the best Irish pot still of the year. It's the first time whiskey that isn't out of Middleton, the first time that isn't a redbreast, has won that accolade. So we're doing something right. If Jim Murray thinks one of those is the best pot still whiskey of the year, even though legally and technically it's not a pot still whiskey anymore, then we're doing something right. And there you mentioned that it's another story, but
if you can summarize for people listening, just what is pot still and what makes these whiskey not pot still. It's quite subtle, but it's interesting.
Pot still whiskey in Ireland was a form of whiskey which was made famous by the Irish. So the Scots made mostly single malt. We made mostly pot still. A pot still whiskey is a whiskey made from malt, barley, which is unmalted barley, and other grains. And the other grains are either mostly oats, wheat, and rye. So in the case of the one I showed you from Bandon earlier, number 15, that contains all 5 grains: malt, barley, wheat, oat, rye. If you're going to make a pot still whiskey now, it can only contain 5% other grains. Only 5%. But historically, that doesn't stand up. Historically, you would have up to around 30% other grains. And that's nature's sort of inbuilt break, because if you're using a primitive distillation system like we have, or like they used back in the day, above 30% other grains, you get a thing called a stuck mash. In other words, it all gelatinizes, it all turns to jelly in your mash tun, and you've got a half a ton of wobbling porridge. So 30% is a natural break point. And that was the way things were till 2014, when the government here introduced a definition of pot still whiskey. And what they did, unfortunately, was they decided that the way Middleton make, or Irish distillers do and have made pot still whiskey, was the only way you could do it. And that unfortunately went into law. So you had a law designed around redbreast and green spot. Not good. So we as an industry have been fighting for 10 years now to turn that around. We actually are getting somewhere, because the current law cannot stand, because it cannot be justified. There is no historical evidence to back it up, whereas there is historical evidence to back up a mash bill up to 30% other grains. That's the kind of whiskey we make. I can't call it pot still, but I can call it is a whiskey. It's an Irish whiskey still, because it's made with grain, and it makes a very interesting whiskey.
Interesting. Thank you for summarizing all of this. I'm sure we can discuss about that for just an hour, just about this subject.
Yeah, easily. But so that's what we do. We do interesting things. What we did, I might show a little quick video now just to break this up.
Yeah.
Our very first barrel, we turned our first barrel into a fiddle. You know, like a fiddle?
Yeah.
So this video you're going to see now, the man playing the fiddle is a luthier. He built the fiddle. We gave him our very first cask of whiskey, and this is him for the first time playing a tune on a fiddle or a violin made from an oak whiskey cask.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's just a bit of fun, but so it's in case you're interested, it was a European oak, and it did contain sherry. And if you sniff the fiddle, you get a distant smell of sherry.
Yeah, you smell it.
Yeah, to this day. Yeah, interesting.
That's nice. Yeah, interesting. So we cover many things in the last minutes. I mean, a bit of history, a bit of how you do the whiskey, how you let's say you're designing the evolution of the distillery. Very interesting, and we can definitely talk with all of these subjects for half an hour just for this. But it's already almost 30 minutes in. I want also to talk about the other products you have. So it's new. I think I was not aware you did vodka, but you're doing vodka and still doing gin. So we had this first gin 3 years ago with you guys. and you present a new bottle. So maybe you can explain
Sure.
a bit the product and also the new labeling.
Yeah, this is our new white spirits range. So it's the same, pretty much the same gin you have. There's a classic gin, and there's a Wexford strawberry gin made with Irish strawberries. It's in a new brand, it's in a new package, it's in the larger bottle, 70 cl bottle. I think it's quite smart. So that's our white spirits. We also do a vodka, and they're rather tasty. Because brands evolve and brands change, and we hadn't. That initial design was from 2014, so about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we updated the brand. Likewise, with our own whiskey now, we are releasing our own whiskey, in-house whiskey now under the Blackwater brand, Blackwater Irish whiskey. So it's a move on. So the Dirt Grain was the first release, and now everything will be under the Blackwater brand. So Blackwater, the full Irish, is our new whiskey, which gets launched in the next couple of weeks. This is going to be core, and it's a tasty whiskey. It contains all 6 permissible grains in Irish whiskey, and the 6 are barley, malt, wheat, oat, rye, and maize. So 6. That's why it's called the full Irish. And it's finished in a stout bottle. A stout cask, I'm sorry. So what we did was we blend the whiskey, and then we stick it into a stout barrel from a local brewery, and we leave it there for 6 months. And this is it, the full Irish. And that's our new logo for the whiskey, which is a man waving some grain in the air. And that's the full Irish. So it's a bottle at 48.5%. So it's strong enough, punchy enough.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. So you had some small releases.
This is our
in the past. So they were your first releases coming from your stills, because before that we talked about that the Velvet Cap and other products were
sourced.
You used sourced from other distilleries. But now you're opening the window of bringing your own whiskey to the market.
Exactly. So we've released 4. Well, we've released 3 so far. The first one was a single malt, the second one was a rye, and the third one was a pot still, and the fourth one is the one I've just showed you. And the first 3 were single casks, so it was only a few hundred bottles, and they sold out within a couple of days. There's a lot more of this, and it's a better price point as well. So this is going to be available as of about next week in Ireland, and hopefully before too long it'll get to Quebec.
Yeah, we will definitely looking to do a private import of this product as well for the group. Absolutely. And can you talk a bit about what's coming for you?
Sure.
What the following products or
I can do, because
trials you're doing, or you mentioned a lot of things about the cereals and everything. Are you also doing some let's say testings or looking at different type of yeast in the process?
We're next year we have coming out a core pot still, so it'll be a 5-year-old, and we have made that with modern varieties of barley. We've also made it with heritage barleys, 3 different types, one called Hunter, one called Goldthorpe, one called Old Irish. And it's interesting because they're all 3 quite different, and all we've done is change the variety of barley. All our grains are grown for us or by us in Ireland, so it's all Irish grains. It's all malted in Ireland, and if we use peat, it's all malted and peated in Ireland as well. So that's part of our DNA, if you like, is to try to keep it real and make sure we support local grain farmers.
Awesome. Yeah, so we are definitely looking forward to taste again your products. The Velvet Cap was pretty interesting.
I mean the Velvet Cap.
That. So it's. Are you the one who tastes and assemble everything, or you have someone with you?
It's myself and with our head distiller called John, and John and I designed this to be a very easy drinking whiskey. But the great thing about blending whiskies and learning as you go is that, then all the lessons we've learned putting this whiskey together, we've used to put this whiskey together, which is, our own. We couldn't have done that if we hadn't done this.
Okay.
One of the tricks we learned with this one was we aged it, some of it in stout casks, and what we noticed is that stout casks really soften the mouthfeel of a whiskey. So when we were putting this together, we thought we need a little bit of softness. So that's where we went to a local brewery, got some stout casks. We wouldn't have known that had we not experimented already.
Okay, nice, awesome. So there are a few opportunities for us then. There is the gin. Maybe we can order back again. There is this new full Irish product that I'm really looking forward to taste. That's absolutely interesting to have that.
And of course, if you guys wanted a single cask proposition just exclusively, actually something we did do, I should say, is that one of your wines that you import from Chateau Saint-Hilaire in Medoc, we met here 3 years ago, and I flew over to Bordeaux to meet them, and we got on really, really well. So they have sent us some of their wine casks, and we have put our whiskey in their wine casks. So we actually have sort of a Quebecois collaboration only because of you guys. So we have several casks of our own whiskey sitting in Chateau Saint-Hilaire casks at the moment, which will be 5 years old next year. Maybe that's something we should talk about, because there is a reason for it. You've got a collaboration between Ireland and France and Quebec, and it's all in a bottle.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that later for sure. And on top of that, there's definitely this third grain package that you showed us that is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there is some of it left. We only did 1,000 units. This is my one, number 3. We auctioned number 1 for charity. We do have some of this left. And the great thing about this is if you get it with some friends, it gives you a chance to sit down, read the book, and there's tasting notes, and literally you can taste your way through 200 years of Irish history.
Yeah, that's very interesting to go through different tastes and different recipes and understand where it comes from.
Yeah, and to know why they taste different. They taste different because you've changed the grains, and you can actually taste the wheat in one of the whiskeys. Then you can start tasting the oats when it comes in. And it gives you a sense of what was happening in Ireland at the time as well, and how we made it, and we lay it all out in the book, and the book comes with the box of whiskies.
That is awesome, great.
There's John. There's our head distiller. He looks like a head distiller, doesn't he? Yeah, doing his job. Yeah.
Of smelling, yeah. Tough job. No, but we know it's a pretty It's a tough job, in fact, to do something good. It's not anyone can do something good. So definitely interesting. So great. So I think we covered pretty much all the aspects I wanted to go through in this 30-40 minutes conversation. Again, I'm going to say it again, but we can talk for hours about many things. But just for the purpose of this conversation, I think it was very interesting to go through and touch some aspects, some subjects, and I really invite people to go through your book to understand more about whiskey in Ireland. And maybe we can finish with a question I got, and on your book, it's called Whiskey with an E, and on your product, it's whiskey without the E.
Yeah. There is 3 ways you can spell whiskey legally. One is with an E, one is without an E, and the third one is in Irish, which is Uisce Beatha Éireannach. So there's 3 ways we can legally do this. The use of E in Irish whiskey is a hangover from the days of monopoly, because believe it or not so long ago, up to the late 1980s, there was only one company making whiskey in Ireland, and that was Irish Distillers. which are then owned by Pernod. And at the time, they took over Paddy whiskey. Paddy whiskey made in Cork was WHISKY, as were many other brands that died. And then when they took over Paddy whiskey, they put the E in so that all Irish whiskies had an E. So for me, E is a legacy of monopoly. I'm not so fond of monopolies.
Yeah.
The taking the E out was in our own whiskey was it was just kind of a nod to the fact that we have left that world behind us. We've left the world of that spelling behind us, and we've left the world of monopoly. So where all Irish whiskey tastes the same, that's all gone. And this is our way of signaling our independence, which goes back to the raised fist of protest.
Awesome.
Righteous anger, I think, is a good way of putting it.
Awesome. Great. So thank you very much for this time.
Oh, thank you.
It's really appreciated. Maybe one last question. Can you subscribe to the distillery newsletter? I think you have a newsletter on the
we do. Yeah, we have two ways. Go to the website, put your email address in, or go to Facebook, and we have a Facebook group called Facebook Whisky Republic and Blackwater Whisky Republic, and then you will get advance notice of everything we're doing and access to stuff just to come and see us and things like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Great. And looking forward to talk to you again, maybe in the near future for a tasting, maybe together.
That'd be great.
It was just a discussion, but we can definitely do a web tasting together with people ordering your products. So looking forward for this.
Particularly if you get this in, it'll be very educational. We can get John, our head distiller, on as well, because he's really good talking about the whiskies and how he made them as well.
I hope so. I'm definitely taking a note for this. It's very interesting offer. Thank you for that. Awesome. So have a good evening then. Thank you for joining us again, and enjoy your weekend. And we're going to work on our side to make this happen.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Merci beaucoup, Peter. Bonne fin de journée.